just to be clear to all the candidates and would-be candidates out there, this isn't your program. This isn't the GOP, channel. We try and bring candidates on who contact us who have something to say. But I don't run this show as a conga line for candidates just to kill time. Sometimes I'm friends with the candidate, so out of respect, I'll do it. Sometimes, candidate's second, third place, it's worth a shot. But if you're at 5% or under, 4% or under, maybe we'll bring you on and maybe we won't. We don't bring candidates on all the time. And most of the time, the candidates contact us. And if I put on, ladies and gentlemen, candidates who want to come on this program every time they ask, we would have a candidate every day, 5 days a week. Would we not, Mr. Producer? Would you listen to that? Would you even want to listen to that? I don't. So I figured you don't. So we try and spread it out from time to time. And I would say this, what we are learning here is that some of these candidates have campaign staffs that are really whip smart, on the ball, and some of them have arrogant putzes. Now, I'm not going to get into who right now, but it really is amazing. We've asked 2 or 3 times you wouldn't bring us. I'm sorry. Do I owe you something? It's not a matter of keeping people off. It's a matter of keeping listeners. There's a lot going on in this country. It's not my job to make sure your candidate does better in the polls. It's my job to inform my audience, who's been with me for over 20 years, about what I think are the priorities going on in this country. The threats we face, which are infinite. I just wanted to make that clear to them. Now, the Wall Street Journal, several decades ago, 30 years ago, I think, give or take. Yeah, it was 2002, actually. Took the position that we should have open borders. The late, great Robert Bartley. He was the Journal's editor for many decades before Paul Gigott stepped in. And on July 3, 2000, he wrote a piece in the editorial page, and it was titled, Liberty's Flame Beacons a Bit Brighter. They said, it's one of this newspaper's proud little traditions. On the 4th of July, we offer an editorial salute to immigration. Back in the immigration debate of 1984, we proposed a 5-word constitutional amendment. There shall be open borders. We have repeated this periodically since under our editorial headline invoking liberty's torch, the rekindled flame. Has that worked, this open border stuff? I would ask the Wall Street Journal editorial page. We've now had experience with it under Joe Biden. Is that a good thing? Hundreds of thousands dead from drug overdoses, including fentanyl. Drug cartels controlling our border. Sex trafficking of women and little children. The government unable to track young people who come into this country, even though they're supposed to track them, putting them out as fast as they can into the general public, where they're now being basically indentured servants. Can anybody think of anything good that's come out of open borders? So the Wall Street Journal editorial page in the radical position was 100% wrong. But this is the mentality. Maybe they've changed their view, but this is the mentality they started with. That Paul Gigott, the individual there who now is the editorial... Listen, I've known Paul Gigott for decades. We don't really talk. But when he calls me Mark Levin, when he knows it's Levin, I'll call him Paul Gigott. Right, Mr. Producer? So here's this editorial, July 6, 2023, in the Wall Street Journal. DeSantis' crackdown will exacerbate the state's labor shortage while doing nothing to fix Biden's border failures. Florida Governor, they really like Chris Christie. They want Chris Christie to be the nominee. They would do anything for Chris Christie. They would. Peggy Noonan, I'll get to her later with her piece. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' economic record may be the biggest selling point of his presidential campaign, yet he's doing neither his state nor his campaign a favor with an immigration crackdown that looks excessive and may do economic damage in the fast-growing state. Now, most of these guys who write, without even putting their names on these editorials, they're built like pears, upside-down pears. Do you know what I mean, Mr. Producer? Which can happen if you sit too long. And I don't know the last time Paul Gigot has been to the border or not, quite frankly. Mr. DeSantis signed legislation in May that he claimed would combat Biden's border crisis. But the law, which took effect, last week, does nothing to stem the flood of migrants taking advantage of the Biden lax border last week, does nothing to stem the flood of migrants taking advantage of the Biden situation. How do they know this? Didn't they just say he just signed it into law, Mr. Producer? Well, they're prescient. The law requires employers with 25 or more workers to use the U.S. government's E-Verify system to confirm the legal status of new hires. Those who don't could be fined $1,000 a day. Sounds pretty good to me. I mean, either you're going to have a law and enforce it or you're not. Businesses that knowingly employ undocumented immigrants can have their state licenses and permits revoked. Many employers may lay off workers they suspect are illegal to protect themselves. Isn't that a good thing? This sounds like a great law, by the way. I guess that's why people are pouring into Florida, not Manhattan, where the Wall Street Journal editorial page is housed. An estimated 772,000 undocumented immigrants. This is how they write. Wall Street Journal. Not illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants. They talk like the left. Lived in Florida in 2018, many of whom have been there for years and contribute significantly to the state economy. Here you go. Construction, agriculture, hospitality depend heavily on undocumented workforces, not least because of a shortage of U.S. workers for such lower wage and unskilled jobs. Don't we hear this endlessly, America? How many more aliens is it going to take for the Wall Street Journal and the other border pacifists to be bitten by reality? How many more millions and millions of aliens is it going to take? They use the same line every time. Jobs Americans won't do. If you have liberty and tyranny, dust it off. Dust it off and go to the immigration chapter. With this entire ruse about Americans won't do these low-skilled, unskilled, low-paying jobs is a lie. It is a flat-out lie. It is a stereotype, a negative stereotype of Americans. Employers in these industries are reporting that they have been losing long-time employees and can't find new ones to replace them. Well, why did they hire them in the first place? And when they hired them illegally, why didn't they take steps to bring them through the legal process? Is that the fault of a governor who's trying to secure his state? It is the Wall Street Journal, after all, not the Main Street Journal. Many workers who are here illegally are worried they will be found out, and some are moving to other states. A quarter to half of workers have reportedly gone missing from some construction sites in South Florida. The main reason for that is what? Florida will not honor driver's license given to illegal aliens in other states, because it does not give driver's licenses to illegal aliens. That is identification. For a lot of reasons, including voting. Florida's a top producer of tomatoes, oranges, avocados. Yet about half the crop farm workers lack legal immigration status. Now, how do they know that? And if they know that, how is it that all these undocumented workers are here? The thumbing of your nose at the law just because it's immigration law, just because you have policies that you have believed for decades that are so radical and so damaging to the nation that you don't believe that a governor should secure his border to protect the people who are in his state is obnoxious. We can have legal immigration, but not as long as the border's open. Nothing's legal. Maybe the Wall Street Journal can tell us how many members of the drug cartels from Central and South America are in Miami or other cities in Florida. How much fentanyl is in Florida as a result of the failure to secure the border? How many unreported crimes, I can play this game, have occurred in Florida as a result of these open border policies? They don't care and they don't know. One grower in Homestead told Noticias Telemundo, oh, that's great, that she has struggled to find workers since the law passed. Quote, South Florida's economy here in Homestead is agriculture. Most of them we know are undocumented, she said. Who's going to harvest? You know, we even have visa laws. My wife used to work in this field. This wasn't her area, but it was one of the things she was responsible for as a deputy general counsel for a company. There's like scores of various types of visas that can be given out, including for harvesting, farming, seasonal visas and so forth. And they are used. And people use them. And the Wall Street Journal editorial page knows this, but doesn't communicate it to you. Part of the problem is that these are temporary visas. And after they're done, they don't leave. So according to the Wall Street Journal, just keep bringing people in. Don't enforce any of the laws. Don't enforce any of the visa requirements and limitations. Just keep the cycle going and going and going and going. Because they'll talk about the farms, but they don't go to the farms. They'll talk about the border, but they don't go to the border. Demand for services and housing are surging amid Florida's population boom. That means more workers are needed to build homes, change hospital beds, serve nursing home patients meals, keep restaurants open. Listen to how stereotypical, and they sound like radical. They sound like AOC, trashing the American people. They sound like Bernie Sanders. You see, you Americans, excuse me, you don't want to build homes. But for immigrants, particularly illegal immigrants, we wouldn't, we wouldn't be building homes. We wouldn't be changing hospital beds. We wouldn't be serving nursing home patients. We wouldn't have restaurants open. What kind of crap is this? This will dent the state's economic expansion, which has produced a jobs and tax revenue boom and an affordable standard of living for nearly everyone. And it goes on. It's really quite detestable. DeSantis is right to lambaste the Biden administration and Congress for their immigration failures. They polarized the issue politically, made solutions much more difficult. Makes no sense for Mr. DeSantis to punish his own state, even as he vows to clean up the mess in Washington. Why don't you clean up the mess in the editorial page room at the Wall Street Journal? And why don't you tell the American people you favor open borders? You attack Biden from time to time, but Biden's only doing what you lectured about a couple of decades back. Really appallingly stupid piece. You could do better than that. I mean, there's like 6 of you sit around a table.